With that, it is my great pleasure to hand over to Ani Dasgupta and Jose Luis. There you both are. So please take it away and give us your impressions and closing remarks for this year's TT. So, gentlemen, stage is yours.
Thanks a lot. We're almost there. We want to take a few minutes to reflect on the last 2 days and mostly to thank. But I hope you guys are doing okay. I'm personally ready for a drink, but the rest of you are doing good. It turns out, just not only here, people in this room, there have been a lot of other people engaged in this conversation across the world. And I just wanted to share with you what our team has found, what's happened in the last few days. It seems TTDC18, hashtag TTDC18, was trending yesterday and today. And in most cities, this wouldn't be a big deal. But in Washington, trending on Twitter,
it's a lot of competition.
It's a pretty big deal. So anyway, that is true. Seemed 30,000 times our website, our webpage was been seen, so a lot of interest. But most interestingly, 6,000 people connected live stream, and that's fantastic. This is the fantastic facility we have at the bank here, that they were able to connect and listen to some of it, part of the discussion. And it's been from all over the world. I was just fascinated to see from Bangladesh, remember the 12-hour time difference, Pakistan, Nepal, India, United States, of course, Ghana, Nigeria, Sri Lanka, Egypt, UK. These were the top viewers. So it's interesting that not only you here are able to participate, that now people across the world can at least listen to this rich discussion that's happened. I just wanted to just share, we were just thinking about preparing this last few minutes of thanks, that why we chose the topic of digital and all, and focusing on the region of Africa. I mean, every time you open a newspaper everywhere in the world, you see what's happening on digitization, and everyone telling us how transportation sector will be completely reinvented. The question is, whether it will be reinvented, which will be good for people and the planet, and that's the question we wanted to ask all our panelists, and you heard just a fantastic discussion on that just now. And our reason to focus on Africa, simply because that's the place, and there was a panel just before this one, that's where most of the urbanization is taking place, most of the shifts are taking place. The question is, because there's digital changes that's coming to mobility, can that leapfrog help Africa? And you heard some of that right now. But one of the things that we have heard last year, this year, is a need for coordinated action. And that's where SUM for All comes in as a big way to what happened last year, but what we have achieved now.
About partnering. And if something that I'm really very proud of what happened these last 2 days was this conference became like a platform for many different organizations to showcase what we are doing together, or working different teams, trying to address sustainable mobility. Different points of view, candid discussions, but then the ability to reach closure and align ourselves behind a common vision. And this is what Sustainable Mobility for All as an initiative is about. 49 organizations, leading organizations, have come together. We have the fourth consortium meeting, where we sign a charter that tells what we stand for, a vision of mobility, sustainable mobility for all, that will work for all, around 4 goals that were the ones that helped organize the conference. Access for all, or universal access, efficiency, safety, and green, including climate, pollution, and resilience. What is very interesting in this example is that we have organizations that have a clear focus on urban transport, but are acknowledging that rural access remains very relevant for people in Africa. And thanks to the work that we have been doing with DFID, for example, it shows that actually the situation about rural access has not improved. We have many challenges now coming from the urban transport side with the pace of urban development in many countries, but still we have this challenge. So being able to agree on the issues, realizing that the four goals reinforce each other. That say efficiency has to produce savings to deal with the access gap, that lean and green have to come together in order to have a system that is a zero emission system, as was said before. Realizing that we may be comfortable working in some sectors, but actually we have to bring all the sectors together. And having all these organizations, as I think it was Kristalina who said, this is too big for one organization to think that you can tackle everything. So this is, I think, a very positive evolution of the concept of partnering with a very clear narrative that will help us position the sector and move into action.
You know, this panels that we put together last 2 days is connected directly to the four goals, and it's pretty obvious if you open the agenda, you will see that each of the plenaries is directly connected. And all of us in this room, you know, think about and talk about transportation and mobility all the time, but we were both discussing and thinking about what did we hear, and all of you heard different things. That what did we hear in the last few days that really resonated, and just we want to share few of the things from that we, Jose Luis and I have heard that really resonated with us, that made us think hopefully differently. One is, starting off, it was actually the first panel, I hope you were here for that, where Enrique Penalosa talked about how democratization and sustainable mobility are interconnected goals. And to me, I mean, for me, I cannot tell you how much that resonates, that we cannot build cities that are unequal and also try to have sustainable outcomes. And he had very good examples of how transportation is a perfect example of road use and who is using roads, and people who drive single owner cars or single passenger cars, what it does to it. So this whole point of that building sustainable cities and building equal cities are one and the same things is something that resonated a lot with me, and I hope it did with you too.
For me also was very important to see this time that, and also picking on what Mayor Peñalosa said, how many inequalities are out there just in front of us and we are doing nothing. And actually, we are starting to do something about it. For example, the discussion about gender in transport. When we talk about how certain barriers are preventing women to use public transportation, and the courage that it takes for some of us, of partners, to talk about that. So you heard Kathy Sierra talking about the problems that we face in the bank. Transport operators would not like to taint the image of a system, but if we don't talk about them, we cannot solve them. So now we have clearly an understanding that this is the time to be candid and address these issues. And I'm very glad that in the context of this discussion, we come up with some important lessons. We need to give voice so we understand better the transport needs of women. We need to give participation in employment to gain that advantage. And we have to put in place some mechanisms to remove those barriers. We have signed with UITP an agreement that will allow us to explore this issue, to develop a body of knowledge, good practices on how we can tackle the issue of security in public transport that will benefit women in particular, but also men. And imagine for a moment, if we succeed doing that, what will be the implications of women being able to access jobs, the ridership of these systems, how it will improve? So that was striking. A second, also related to the kind of inequalities, road safety, which is another inequality. Three things I think we'd like to mention is what happened at the conference. First, Jean Todt, as a special envoy, announcement of a trust fund starting with about $700 million, the mandate that he got from the UN, from the Secretary General, to put in place a trust fund. What does this will do? It will eliminate all the excuses, right, to take action. It will also have forced us to address some of the issues. You may remember arrogance and ignorance, right, about the data. It will become a governance issue, having a trust fund where we cannot say what is happening, what is the impact of what we do. So we forced us to do that. During the context also of the conference, we had the launch of 2 reports that I think bring new perspective to the issue of road safety. One was an attempt to explore it from a health perspective, to measure, say, what is the cost of inaction. So, thanks to Bloomberg Foundation, some work we have done together, we were able to, using the methodologies that in health are used for other diseases, to quantify the impact it will have, say, road safety, reducing the fatalities to 50% as mandated by the target, will have in terms of GDP. In the past, we have measured the cost of crashes. This is how is the impact on GDP, from 6 to 22% in terms of GDP across it's a cumulative in 24 years, 7 to 32% in terms of welfare losses. So we have now an indication of the cost of inaction. Also, a report produced together with the World Resources Institute, the Road Center, and the Global Road Safety Facility, that talk about some paradigm shifts, interesting. And among, say, chief of all is shifting the blame away from drivers and pedestrians and put it into city planners and officials, so it's more a system issue. And I think that will bring in new perspectives as we further develop that.
We were also given a very big challenge off the bat, as Laura, Tuck, and Andrew spoke in the beginning, and that this was how the challenge was presented. I think Andrew said this, or Laura, that they will be meeting in Davos in 2 weeks, where all the rich, famous, and the powerful will gather. And they said there will be a lot of meetings on transport, but the meetings on transport will be on technology, on the new data, but the head of state meetings will be on climate or other such things, but not on transport. The question they were asking us, the challenge they had for us, is how do we elevate the discussion we're having here to a higher level of political discourse, similar to the discourse that's going on climate, where heads of states are actually involved and trying to shift. And I hope you all agree, we think that is where we need to figure out how we move the transportation discussion, the mobility discussion that we've had for the last 2 days, to actually a political discussion so we can make the shifts that we've been talking about the last few days.
And also, you were mentioning technology, and clearly, the disruption that technology is bringing is creating new pathways for development. So we cannot ignore it. I think Kristalina made the case about, say, it's already here, have a Tesla. So there is clearly the discussions throughout these 2 days showing, say, how many smart solutions can become available now as a result of technology. And a trend that, say, we can see very clearly that the future of transport is going through automated vehicles, electric or zero emissions after the last panel, shared and data-driven, that this is what will define the future. So the question is, will it work for everyone? Are we going to leave some people behind? And here again, it's for us to think how we develop the tools to make sure that, say, we democratize also the access to this technology, that we help countries develop the capacity, the skills that they will need to benefit from the use of technology, that they will be informed, because it could go one way or the other, as was said by one of the panels, technology is agnostic. So it could give us the smartest solutions and provide, say, the best efficiency, removing any friction in flows of information and services, and providing inclusion, or could we do the opposite? Could we create cybersecurity issues, exclusion, control, right? So it will depend on how we manage this process and how we prepare the countries to develop the capacity. The learning institutions that we have to help create as technology will continue evolving. The bike sharing arrangements that we have in the past now are evolving as well, so how we prepare them for that.
So the last observation is not surprising for me. I mean, I think and worry about cities a lot. I think this comes up every year, but this year I felt it came up much more, the integration of transportation planning and urban and land use planning. It even came up in the last discussion on the green. And I think this is something we want to think about and how we can integrate that discussion further. It's clear that the outcome we're looking for sustainable mobility for all cannot just happen if you don't actually connect where people live and how people need to move together. The question is, I hope you also, all of you having your own reflections and own memories of what resonated with you. The question is what we're going to do differently as we go forward, right?
Yeah, with some commitment. So let me start by saying a commitment on behalf of Sustainable Mobility for All, not on behalf of the bank. This is the group of all the partners that we have. Last year, we produced a report, the Global Mobility Report, that gives a snapshot of where the countries are. This year now, we are focusing on developing a roadmap and a plan of action for each goal and for the integration of these goals. It's a very ambitious piece of work. We hope that you will engage in the conversation. We are planning, next meeting will be in May, the summit, the ITF summit. And throughout the year, you will see some communications and probably by the end of the year have a report in this respect. Now, in terms of committing now the bank, we have embraced this digital economy paradigm. Today we are mentioning digital economy. A couple of years from now, that will be the economy. We will not distinguish anymore. But we want to help, as we see the value of preparing countries to move in that direction, we are going to continue working on what we have done in terms of accessibility tools, platforms that we can share, but because they are done with open source software, so that we can share with everyone, so we can check that our projects, our solutions are more inclusive. And we are committed to further engage other actors, we are engaging through our president with other actors, to make sure that we can create those platforms where we share data, and that is made in a manner that is available to everyone, to be able to use them for research purposes and for different purposes. So you will hear from the bank. We're going to have a series of events and then also partnering with some important organizations in this regard.
From our side, I think a lot of the work we do, just like Jose Luis says, it's in partnership with many organizations, and a lot of the organizations actually are here. The two things I want to highlight, this is not a kind of a complete summary of what, but one thing I want to highlight from the discussion that you heard, our work focusing on actually new mobility, and in multiple facets of new mobility, how this is going to be shaped. One of the things we've been working on, Robin Chase was here yesterday morning, is developing a set of principles called Shared Mobility Principles with 10 other nonprofits like us. Just a starting guideline for cities as they develop policies for new mobility. That is something that is actually available. You can go to sharedmobility.org to see what the principles are, and we will actually bringing in a lot of new private sector players into signing up to this movement. That's one work that I would invite you to join us to work, because there's lots need to be done on policy sphere on the new mobility. The second, what I was saying earlier today, is we are very keen, and this is something we want to work, we are working and want to continue to work very closely with the bank, is actually making knowledge available to the right time at the right place. Knowledge is one of the things that we talk about all the time, but it's kind of tricky. You need to get the right kind of knowledge to the right person at the right time, otherwise it's kind of useless. And that is some endeavor we are very much part of, and want to actually refine it with the partnership with you, because there's a lot more we can do just from what's in this room.
And finally, you may have seen throughout the conference, we had like a focus on Africa. There were many people with experience coming from Africa and raising perspectives. Why is that? They confront double the challenges, because they are at the same time facing this rural access issue with very rapid urbanization. And at the same time, it's the opportunity to leapfrog, right, in Africa, particularly when you talk about technology. So we have signed during the conference a memorandum of understanding also with the World Conference on Transport Research and 6 universities from Africa to create a network, and World Resources Institute, to create a network that will help homegrown, some solutions from Africa that will help universities put them in contact with the best research that is happening in other places, to join forces and to become a voice in Africa, to deal with these challenges. We look forward to this partnership in terms of helping organize tailor-made program for Africa, and our SSAT program that we have with the Agence Française and with the African Development Bank, we become a facilitator of this process. So I'm really very excited about this opportunity.
That's the end of our reflection. It's time for us to thank. It takes a lot of people, as you can imagine, to put something like this together. First of all, both of us want to thank Melinda. Melinda's done a terrific job year after year in this, and a big hand.
This year, for sustainability reasons, we have to ask some people to moderate a couple of panels because we realized it was too much.
We have been working with Melinda for many years, as you know. I have not met another moderator who does so much research before each of the events she moderates. So thank you very much. The next, you know, it's absolute pleasure for me to partner with Jose Luis in anything, especially this. So thank you very much, Jose Luis, for years of friendship and this partnership. But it takes a big team. Jose Luis, however great he is, he can't do this alone. It takes a great team, and this time the innovation, please notice innovation. We actually have a slide with all the names so that I don't screw up all the names there. But I do want to point out that Marcela, please can you stand up? Can you please stand up? It's been a fantastic partner to work with, and thank you to the whole World Bank team. It's a pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with you. Thank you very much.
And also, it's my pleasure also to acknowledge it has been a fantastic 7 months of working together with a very large World Resources Institute team, going to their place, they come into the bank. But in particular, I want to acknowledge the relationship we have developed throughout the years with Annie that have helped us prepare this, Matt, Ayun, and the whole team, Larissa. And finally, a big thank to all of you, because the success of this conference is predicated on your involvement, your participation. And as a host, look forward, many of you, continue the engagement throughout the year in the various events and your contribution to the sector. And this place is always ready and open for all of you to come again next year.
Thank you very much. And think about what should be the topic of the next year's conference and let us know. Thank you very much for being here.